在跟口译哥的访谈中，他提到人与人的共同点是个最好来社交的一个起点。那这个单元就让我跟 Nick 来教大家如何利用我们的共同点，继续话题，擦出更多的火花。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast。I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. Today's episode, we want to follow up on a really interesting part of our interview with Vincent. He talks about one of the key ways of building rapport and relationships with people is finding that commonality, and also having a well-rounded education and ability to read things and just have general conversations about a lot of different topics. So today, we want to get into how do you double down on that commonality, or how do you find something that both of you can share and have a longer conversation about with a new friend or new acquaintance.
那在 Vincent 的这个访谈当中，他就讲到嘛，他觉得人与人之间的社交最好的一个话题就是我们之间的共同点，我们的 commonality。那在那个单元，因为是个访谈，我们没有太多的机会去延伸到语言的部分。那在今天这个单元就想要带到 OK， 我们找到了共同点，那我们要接下来要怎么样继续我们这个话题，怎么样利用我们之间的共同点来建立我们之间的关系。
We have three basic ways that you can follow up or continue a conversation about a commonality or jump into a commonality with someone. And those ways have a lot more to do with how deep do you want to get into this conversation. So the first way is just show that you want to know more. Maybe this is not a hobby or activity that you yourself have a lot of interest or a lot of knowledge, but you just want to make the other person feel welcome and get into the topic. The second one is show that you want to learn. Vincent talked about, and we've talked about on this show, that people like to talk about their own interests or their own skills or experience. So if you're genuinely interested in understanding more, even if you're a novice or you don't have a lot of experience, then you can just show them that you want to learn. And the last way is show that you want to tag along. Meaning is this is something that you think both of you could eventually do together. It's a common hobby, a common interest that you could really deep dive and jump into.
所以我们今天提供给大家3种不同的方法。那刚刚 Nick 有讲到嘛，因为有很多你可能自己会感受到在这个 conversation 当中，你是多么想要跟这个人能够有更进一步的可能是 conversation， 或者你是不是想要继续谈这个话题，你们自己可以去心中都有一把这个尺。那有可能某一些话题你觉得你们就可以继续聊下去就好了， that's it。 或者是有一些事情你会发现我可以跟这个人，或许我们可以一起来做这件事情。所以有3个不同的一个 level， 也就是 show that you want to know more， 你想要知道更多，还是你想要跟他学习，或者你想要跟着他一起做这件事情。 So we'll start with just to show that you want to know more. And to me, I'll give an example, and Nick laugh at me all the time. For example, camping. I'll always ask people, if they show their interest in camping, I'll always ask, okay. What would you like to use, and what sort of tent, what kind of brands that you like to use when you go on camping? And that's it. That's it really for me.
Yes, if anyone who has met Sherry knows that camping is very far away from an activity that she would jump into. But it can be something that is a good way to allow someone to speak more, even if you want to get deep into the topic. So using a phrase like, you mentioned something, like you mentioned camping. What are the best places in Taiwan to go camping that people don't know about? If someone has a secret spot or they have some special experience, this is a great way to jump in with them.
And I think Vincent mentioned that he loves cooking, right? And you can say, oh, you mentioned you like to cook for yourself. And what was your favorite dish? 基本上你就可以用这个句型 You mentioned this 然后你接下来就可以用一个 open-ended question What was and what is?
And the open-ended question is really important because a lot of people will be like, oh, you mentioned cooking. Do you like hot pot? and it just ends like yes or no. And this happens a lot, to me as a foreigner where people will be like, oh, do you like bubble tea? Do you like hot pot? Do you like pig's blood? Do you like chicken feet? And this just becomes very quickly a yes or no, like sorting out a laundry list. But in the case of Vincent, food is not just a topic for conversation. It's a passion. So having that open-ended question, what do you find the most challenging types of food to make? This really allows him to explore that interest and build more commonality with the other person.
And the next one is show that you want to learn. And I really like this because I think everyone would like to provide advice. It's to everyone's nature that we like to tell people what's the best thing to do. So you can basically ask, do you have any advice for someone, let's say cooking, who isn't good at cooking but would like to be in the future?
This is, again, a very open-ended question.
Yeah.
It's not like, do you like teaching people how to cook? Maybe the answer is no, and the conversation ends there. But when you show that you're really interested in the topic, could you give me suggestions how to this thing? And if you have an interest in their hobby, you can even deep dive into a little more. Could you give me any suggestions on how to get into French cooking? And that more specific part allows them to dive into their experience if you've heard something particularly that they like to get into.
Or you can say, could you give me any suggestions on how to cut onions without crying? I would love to know that.
Right. So these type of interest in their advice and their suggestions and their experience. We got into an interesting story about where Vincent found his love for cooking, his first job or just a natural passion. Those also become really interesting questions where, do you have any advice on how I could get started? Favorite cookbooks or favorite shows or YouTube channels, etc. Then that also allows them to tell their own story.
那如果你今天跟这个人呢，你聊天觉得很舒服，你想要跟他可能有更进一步的联系，可能要一起喝个咖啡还怎么样 You can show that you wanted to tag along with these interesting activity that he or she likes. Because you can start with the sentence with, wow, that sounds so interesting. I really wish I could experience that myself.
There's always a lot of segues that you can use to maybe suggest going out. So, for example, there's a friend of ours who is big into whiskey and wine bars. So the first conversations with him usually end up back in that. And then you can just be like, oh, next Saturday night, I'd really like to go out and, experience one of these for myself. Where do you think I should start? Or would you have any time to show me where I can go enjoy that?
Or you can just say, oh, it would be so nice to see you in action. Like, for example, cooking or pottery making, see them in action.
So if anyone has any kind of artistic talent, you'll be like, oh, where do I go see your paintings? Or is there any way that I could see you build this thing? And then it kind of follows up on, how often do they do it? Or is there any way that you could go do this together?
因为我觉得如果突然间很直接问人家说 I want to go out with you. Or I want to do this with you.
What's your number?
有点怪怪的, right? Well, depending on the culture, I think sometimes we'd feel a little bit awkward to just write out and say that. So 我们会需要用一些 segue, 就是我们刚刚所讲的 Oh, it would be nice to see you in action. Or, oh, wow, I would love to experience that myself. Do you have any suggestions? And kind of wait till the other person to offer that. It's like, oh, come along with me. I'm going there next Saturday. Right?
All right, so you saw a lot of these in separation. But if you wanted to put them together, it's always a good way to show that you want to know more, show that you want to learn, and then show that you want to tag along. You can build this into a conversation of getting to know someone.
So let's give you guys another example. So let's say Nick's current interest, and he mentioned, he loves to make pottery. And 如果我们刚刚照着我们这种3种不同的方法来问他问题的话，就打开这个话题的话，我可能第一个会问 you mentioned pottery making. What's that like?
Well, it's just a recent hobby that I've been getting into, but it's a really nice way to kind of use my hands and turn off the analytic side of my brain. Because when you're doing pottery, you kind of have to focus on building the shapes and the experience. And so it's something I've enjoyed recently to kind of let my mind go and really just get back to making things.
Oh, nice. So do you have any suggestions on where to go to make pottery?
Well, I know there's a lot of pottery studios around Taiwan. It's been popping up. But for me, is I have a good friend, Emily, who she and her husband just opened this amazing pottery studio, and it ranges from beginners all the way to professionals. It's called Make No Haste. You can find it in Xindian.
Wow, that sounds really cool. I would really love to tag along if you go next time, if that's okay.
Yeah, they have beginners workshop and a cookie and coffee hour on Saturday. I think you should come with me the next time that I go. You can definitely check out their studio.
其实我们刚刚讲的3种不同方法，你可以变成一个 conversation，你可以做1、2、3，所以做成一个步骤，但是你也可以不需要。It really depends on how much you want to tag along.
Yeah, like how far you want to go. But again, that very simple opening, you mentioned A. And then having that open-ended follow-up, it's really easy to get into that conversation. And for those of you who are actually interested in pottery, it is true. A good friend of mine, Emily, has opened a pottery studio that people can check out if you're interested in more and really do need like a hands-on, forget about work and make something really beautiful. You can check out their Instagram at Make No Haste. We'll leave a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
Well, we hope that you enjoyed this conversation on how to build commonality and how to follow up on those conversations. Remember, show that you want to know more, show that you want to learn, and show that you want to tag along. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.